Representatives of every political party, apart from the DUP, are here. And I suppose also Change UK, which is a very small group, is not represented in this, but I think we can speak on their behalf because their views and ours are identical. We've come over because of our concerns about the Ben Act, that is the act passed by the House of Commons back in early September, which says that if there's no deal by Saturday, the government is under a legal obligation to seek an extension. Now, my understanding is the government will seek that extension, and that's good news because in the past they've been suggesting they wouldn't. But the question then is, how long should that extension be? And the difficulty is that we are now clearly in very close negotiations on a possible deal with the EU, which in one level is to be welcomed. But on the other hand, the government has a long track record of using the cliff edge as a means of coercing Parliament into shortcuts. And we want to make sure that our EU interlocutors, both the countries, our partner states, but also the Commission and the Parliament, understand that the Ben Act is an insistence on two things. One, that Parliament doesn't want a no-deal Brexit. And secondly, that Parliament wants a reasonable period of time to consider any deal, decide, for example, a key issue, whether they want to attach a referendum to it as the only basis on allowing it to go through, and time to give proper consideration to the legislation that has to flow from it. That can't be done by the 31st of October. It's abundantly clear. And indeed, in my view, it's going to take several months to do. If there's a referendum, we're probably talking of taking a period up to Easter next year if we moved quickly. So our principal reason for coming over was simply to try to make sure that people understood this, because we were concerned that as the mood shifted from no deal towards a possible deal, this would be lost sight of. And my concern is that if it is lost sight of, then we're just going to get back into a spiral of a political crisis, and that seems to me to be very undesirable. I think that the EU is going to grant us an extension, quite apart from anything else, as they want a deal. And as they appear to be getting quite close to a deal, it's in everybody's interest to have an extension. But as I say, the extension is not an extension for a fortnight. The extension we've asked for the 31st of January. You could argue it would be better to have an even longer extension to make it capable of being collapsed. So if parties reach agreement, you can bring things to an end quickly. But to understand that the UK Parliament has its own constitutional requirements and is not going to be rushed on this. And that, to me, is the single most important element. I realise that they have every reason to feel very frustrated. The fact that Brexit's taken so long, the fact that the last 9 months has been a period of almost interminable crisis, is not conducive to focusing on many other matters, and doubtless there'll be some countries who just feel they want to get this over and done with. Indeed, there's a mood of wanting to get things over and done with in the United Kingdom as well. But it's worth bearing this in mind. The form of Brexit which the Prime Minister wants is clearly significantly different from what Theresa May was trying to negotiate. And it's likely, therefore, that any free trade agreement is going to be much more difficult to achieve because of the desire potentially to deregulate or to separate ourselves from normal European regulations. Now, that bothers me. It's not what I want. But in addition to that, it does mean that there must be a much higher likelihood of any negotiations after our departure during the 14-month period being extremely difficult. So if we start off on the wrong foot because people haven't actually given proper consideration to all this, then I think it's going to be damaging to all parties.